The sun peeked through the blinds of a small, cluttered apartment as Darius stood in front of the mirror, smoothing down the collar of his only white dress shirt. The room around him was modest, worn-out furniture, second-hand books stacked on crates, and a small fan buzzing in the corner. A faded photograph of his mother sat propped up on a shelf, her smile frozen in time. Darius looked at it for a moment, his expression softening. "Today's the day, Ma," he whispered, adjusting the knot of his tie. "If I nail this interview, everything changes." He grabbed his folder with neatly printed resumes, double-checked the address scribbled on a sticky note, and slipped on his scuffed dress shoes. The nerves started creeping in, his stomach tight, palms damp. This wasn't just a job to him, it was his shot out of the cycle he'd been stuck in for years. He had studied, practiced responses, and memorized the company's mission like scripture. As he slung his worn backpack over his shoulder, he glanced around the room one last time. Bills piled neatly on the table. The fridge was nearly empty. Hope hung in the air like a fragile thread. Outside, the city was already buzzing. Cars honked, people rushed by, and Darius walked with purpose, dodging a puddle and checking his watch every few steps. He couldn't afford a cab, so he was walking the last stretch, determined not to be late. He kept rehearsing lines in his head. "I'm a fast learner. I believe in integrity. I'm ready to grow with the company." His phone buzzed, a reminder, interview at 10 a.m. He quickened his pace. The corporate building wasn't far now. The street ahead curved, and as he turned the corner, he didn't realize fate had one more test for him before he could even step through those doors. As Darius rounded the corner, he was focused on the clock, calculating every step. If he kept moving briskly, he'd have just enough time to arrive, fix his collar, maybe even breathe for a second before the interview began. But then he saw her. A woman stood awkwardly by a tree near the curb, wobbling slightly. She was dressed sharply, an elegant orange dress that caught the morning light, paired with sleek black heels and a long black cardigan. But something wasn't right. Her heel had sunk into a storm drain grate, and she was struggling to pull it out without falling. Each tug only made things worse. People walked past her, some glancing, most ignoring. She let out a soft sigh, clearly embarrassed and frustrated. Darius slowed his steps, torn for a moment. He looked back down the street, the glass tower of the corporate building gleaming just a few blocks ahead. He checked his watch, 9:47 a.m. His heart pounded. If I help her, I'll be late. But how can I not? Without overthinking it, he approached her. "Excuse me, miss, need a hand?" he asked politely. The woman looked up, surprised but relieved. "Oh my God, yes. This stupid grate just swallowed my heel," she said with a light, nervous laugh. Darius crouched down carefully, resting his folder and bag beside him. "Hold onto the tree for balance," he instructed. She did as he said, watching him gently grip her shoe. His fingers worked the slim heel free without damaging it, moving with surprising care. After a few delicate adjustments, he managed to wiggle the shoe loose. She nearly toppled but caught herself, laughing again. "You okay?" he asked, standing up. "Yes, thank you," she said, slipping her foot back into the shoe. Most people just kept walking. He smiled briefly. "Can't walk past someone in trouble," he said. "You have a good day." Grabbing his things, he gave her a small nod and jogged off, not realizing her eyes followed him for a long moment, curiosity piqued. Darius didn't know he had just helped the one person who could change his life. Darius raced down the sidewalk, the city blurring around him. His heart pounded louder with each step. The weight of what he had just done, choosing to help a stranger, pressed against the urgency of the moment. He clutched his resume folder tightly in one hand and kept his eyes locked on the towering glass building ahead. He weaved between pedestrians, nearly slipping once on the curb, but caught himself and pushed forward. He burst through the revolving doors of the corporate lobby at 10:07 a.m., his shirt damp with sweat, his breath uneven. The marble floors glistened under the fluorescent lights, and polished professionals moved with confidence through the space. Darius paused only for a second, straightened his shoulders, wiped his palms on his trousers, and walked up to the front desk. The receptionist looked up from her screen, expression unreadable. "Good morning. Can I help you?" I'm here for an interview," Darius said, trying to catch his breath. "Name's Darius Cole. 10 o'clock with Ms. Lawson from Human Resources." She typed quickly, then paused. One moment. She picked up the phone and spoke in a hushed tone. Darius shifted on his feet, willing time to slow down, hoping for a second chance. After a few seconds, she hung up and turned back to him with a polite but cold expression. I'm sorry, Mr. Cole. The interview has concluded. Ms. Lawson waited until 10:05 but had another meeting to attend. It's company policy to disqualify late candidates unless there's an emergency. Darius blinked. Please, I was helping someone. A woman was stuck in the street. Her heel was caught in a grate. I didn't mean to be late. I understand, the receptionist said with practiced sympathy. But I'm afraid the decision is final. He stood there, frozen, trying to hold back the wave of disappointment rising in his chest. The receptionist offered a weak smile. You're welcome to reapply when future openings become available. Darius nodded slowly, numb. Thank you, he mumbled. He turned and walked out, shoulders low, feeling the sting of defeat. The automatic doors slid shut behind him, but the feeling of a door closing on something bigger echoed louder. He stepped back onto the street, invisible again, unaware that the story wasn't over yet. Upstairs, on the top floor of the same building, sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across a sleek modern office. A large oak desk sat at the center, minimalist yet elegant, decorated with a single orchid and a digital nameplate, Evelyn Parker, CEO. The room was quiet, but Evelyn had already been busy since early morning. She had meetings scheduled back-to-back, reports to review, and hiring decisions waiting for her input. She sat at her desk, flipping through a stack of resumes delivered by hour. A fresh cup of coffee steamed beside her, untouched. Evelyn was meticulous. She didn't just glance at credentials. She read between the lines. She cared about people, about potential, not just paper qualifications. As she turned the page, her eyes landed on a name, Darius Cole. Something about the name tugged at her. She glanced at his resume, solid, nothing flashy, but earnest. He had worked multiple jobs while putting himself through school. A short note from HR was clipped to the top corner, candidate missed interview. Disqualified due to late arrival. No follow-up needed. She frowned slightly. Missed his interview, she murmured. Before she could dwell on it further, her assistant knocked and entered. Evelyn, the building's external security feed picked up some minor vandalism overnight. I've pulled footage in case you want to review it. Just leave it, she said, waving him off. But after a few moments, curiosity got the better of her. Evelyn opened the file on her laptop and fast-forwarded through the grainy early morning footage. Nothing significant, until she saw something that made her lean forward. There, on the street just outside, a man was helping a woman in distress. The angle was clear. The woman, herself, was standing by a tree, her heel stuck in a street grate. She watched, transfixed, as the young man gently helped her without hesitation or complaint, kneeling, loosening her shoe, offering support. He didn't linger for thanks. He didn't ask who she was. He just smiled, nodded, and left. Her hand slowly covered her mouth. That was him. She reached for the resume again, Darius Cole. The man who missed his interview, because he had helped her. A stranger. Evelyn sat back in her chair, stunned. 1,000 thoughts swirled in her mind. This wasn't just a coincidence. It was a test of character, and he had passed with flying colors. She grabbed her phone, her voice calm but firm. Get our on the line. I want to talk about a candidate who got away. The office was buzzing with energy that afternoon, but none of the employees knew what had just shifted behind the executive doors. Evelyn Parker stood by the floor-to-ceiling window in her private office, arms crossed, her thoughts racing as she stared down at the city below. The sun was dipping lower, casting golden light across the buildings. Yet all she could think about was that moment on the sidewalk, how a complete stranger had stopped everything to help her, not knowing who she was, not asking for anything, and walked away expecting no recognition. The intercom on her desk buzzed. Ms. Parker, our is on the line, her assistant announced. She walked back to her desk, pressed the button, and spoke clearly, patch them through. A click. Then the line connected. Good afternoon, Ms. Parker. This is Thomas from our. You asked for a moment to speak. Yes, Thomas, she said, her voice composed but firm. I was reviewing the resumes for the associate position and noticed a candidate named Darius Cole. He missed his interview this morning, correct? There was a pause. Yes, ma'am. He arrived late, about 7 minutes after the scheduled time. As per protocol, we marked him as disqualified and moved on. I'd like his file reinstated immediately, she said. Another pause. Reinstated. Forgive me, Ms. Parker, but we typically. I understand the policy, Evelyn interrupted gently, but I'm asking you to make an exception. I encountered Mr. Cole personally this morning. He didn't miss the interview because he was careless or unprepared. He was helping someone in distress, me, in fact. He didn't know who I was, and he made a choice that reflects integrity and character, the very values this company stands for. There was silence on the other end, then a respectful, understood, Ms. Parker. We'll reach out to him immediately. Good, she replied. Reschedule the interview, and this time, make it with me directly. I want to see how he carries that same heart into this company. After hanging up, Evelyn leaned back in her chair and glanced once more at Darius's resume. It wasn't the most polished. It didn't shine with Ivy League names or gold-plated internships. But it told a story, one of persistence, hard work, and quiet resilience. And now, she knew the man behind the page. She smiled faintly. Something told her this wasn't just about hiring another employee. This felt like the beginning of something much bigger. The next morning, Darius sat at the kitchen table in his tiny apartment, staring blankly at a bowl of cereal that had long since gone soggy. The crushing weight of yesterday's disappointment still sat heavy on his shoulders. He hadn't told anyone, not his best friend, not even his aunt, who had been rooting for him to get that job. What was the point? He had missed the one chance that could have changed everything, and for what? A woman he'd probably never see again. His phone buzzed. He picked it up without much interest, assuming it was another spam call or a bill reminder. But then he saw the name on the screen, Parker Industries, HR Department. His brow furrowed. He hesitated, then tapped, answer. Hello, is this Mr. Darius Cole? A professional voice asked. Yes. Speaking. This is Marla from Parker Industries. We'd like to invite you for a second chance interview, this time with our CEO, Ms. Evelyn Parker. Would tomorrow at 10 a.m. work for you? Darius was stunned. Wait, I thought, I missed my shot. There was a pause, then a warm smile behind the voice. Well, it seems Ms. Parker believes everyone deserves a second chance, especially those with a good heart. Darius slowly nodded, though the HR representative couldn't see it. Yes, absolutely. I'll be there. After the call ended, he sat in silence. For a moment, processing. It didn't make sense. Why would the CEO of a massive company want to interview him personally? And why give him a second chance? Later that evening, Darius stood again in front of his mirror. He re-ironed his shirt, polished his shoes until the leather reflected light, and reviewed every note and question he could think of. But this time, there was something else different, a flicker of hope in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He looked at the photograph of his mother once more and whispered, I don't know what's happening, but maybe this was supposed to happen. For the first time in days, he allowed himself a small smile. The city outside his window buzzed as usual, unaware that one life was about to change. And Darius, he was ready for whatever came next. The following morning, Darius stood in the gleaming marble lobby of Parker Industries, dressed in the same carefully pressed white shirt and slacks, but this time with steadier hands and a stronger heart. He had arrived 15 minutes early. The receptionist, now noticeably more welcoming, offered him a polite smile and directed him to the executive floor. His stomach twisted as the elevator climbed, but not from nerves alone. This was different. It wasn't fear of failure this time. It was anticipation, curiosity, maybe even fate. When the elevator doors opened, he stepped into a quieter, more refined world. The air smelled of fresh wood polish and clean linen. A young assistant greeted him and led him through a long corridor with glass walls, where Darius caught glimpses of boardrooms, creative teams, and executive offices. Finally, they stopped outside a door marked Evelyn Parker, Chief Executive Officer. She's ready for you, the assistant said with a soft smile, then stepped aside. Darius took a breath, knocked gently, and entered. The office was spacious and filled with light, but the warmth didn't come from the design, it came from the woman seated at the desk. Darius froze as his eyes met hers. Recognition struck like lightning. It was her, the woman with the orange dress. The one he had helped on the street. Her hair was pinned neatly, her presence composed yet approachable. "Mr. Cole," she said, rising from her chair. "Thank you for coming." Darius stood speechless for a moment. You're the CEO. "I am," she said, offering a gentle smile. "And you're the man who made me late for my own morning meeting, because you stopped to help a stranger." He felt a wave of embarrassment and shock crash over him. I didn't know it was you. I swear, I wasn't trying to." Evelyn raised a hand, calming his worry. "I know. That's the point. You had no idea who I was, and you still chose compassion over convenience. That tells me more about your character than any resume ever could." Darius shifted, unsure how to respond. I thought it was the right thing to do." "And it was," she said. "We live in a world where people are often too busy to see each other. But you noticed. You acted. That matters to me." She gestured for him to sit. As he did, she continued, "I've read your resume, your cover letter, your background. I see someone who's resilient, driven, and has worked hard for every inch of progress. But what stood out most, what got you this second interview, was the fact that you showed up for someone who needed help, even at the cost of your own opportunity." Darius looked down, emotion catching in his throat. "I just didn't want to be the kind of man who walks past someone in need." Evelyn leaned forward, her tone sincere. "We need men like that in this company. Not just talented, but decent. And brave enough to care." In that quiet moment, something shifted. The air felt lighter, the distance between them gone. Darius wasn't just a candidate anymore. He was seen. She extended her hand. "Let's talk about your future with us." Darius stepped out of the towering glass building not as a visitor, but as its newest employee. The sun hit his face as he walked down the marble steps, and for the first time in a long while, the weight on his shoulders felt noticeably lighter. His mind replayed the last words Evelyn Parker had spoken just minutes ago. "We'll start you in a junior role, but I want you mentored directly. I see potential in you, Darius, not just to work here, but to grow into someone who leads here." It wasn't just a job offer, it was validation. A chance. And coming from the CEO herself. It felt surreal. As he reached the sidewalk, he paused and looked up at the tall windows that made up the structure of Parker Industries. Only yesterday, he had stared at them through the lens of defeat. Now, they looked back at him like glass doors flung wide open. Possibility gleamed from every reflection. He reached into his pocket, pulling out the access badge they'd already printed for him. Darius Cole, Junior Associate, Strategic Initiatives. He stared at it for a moment, then let out a quiet, incredulous laugh. He had come from nothing. Shared a one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint, took 2 buses just to get downtown, worked nights at a loading dock to keep his dreams alive. And now, he was officially on the inside. A breeze drifted through the street, and for a second, he imagined his mother's voice in it, soft, proud, whispering, "You kept your heart. That's what brought you here." He closed his eyes, letting that imagined voice settle into his bones. Across the street, the same sidewalk grate still sat quietly under a tree, the very place where everything had changed. He walked over to it, stood in silence, and smiled faintly at the spot. The moment had seemed so small at the time. Helping a stranger. Giving up a shot. But now he understood, it wasn't the moment that was small. It was his act of kindness that was big. A group of interns passed by him, laughing, papers fluttering in hand, each rushing somewhere. Darius adjusted his backpack, straightened his spine, and fell into stride beside them. He wasn't trying to catch up anymore. He belonged here. And this was just the beginning.